Welcome everyone to the CoinRock show. Today we have Yuga Cohler here on the show. Very excited to dive in. We're just talking a few minutes before the launching the recording here. Very interesting show today because we're talking with someone who is deep in the weeds at a very high level here in the Web3 world. So, as you guys know, I start off reading the quote official bio that we have for each guest, and then of course, I'll ask Yuga to go in and tell us more about his journey, his story, and then we'll just go with the flow. So, welcome to the show, Yuga. This is the bio that we have for you. Yuga Kohler is an engineering lead at Coinbase, where he leads on-chain development for the company's developer platform. Prior to Coinbase, Yuga worked at Google for 8 years, leading a variety of teams across cloud and search. Yuga graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, where he studied computer science, and from the Juilliard School, where he studied orchestral conducting. His area of focus is the creation of an open global financial system through blockchain technology, and we'll link, of course, your Twitter X account. So, welcome to the show. Tell us more.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Matthias. Excited to be here. Um, so where to start? I mean, I'm from the Boston area, born here and grew up here, went to school here. Like you mentioned in my bio, I'm also a musician, so I did my graduate studies in New York. But in terms of crypto, I really started getting into it around 2016, 2017, so not that early. Bitcoin had already been around for 6, 7 years, but read the white
Yep.
paper, found it very interesting, especially as I was working on distributed systems at Google. And then fast forward to 2020, in the middle of GME mania. Everyone is stuck at
Yep.
home
Yep.
during COVID, and sort of my relationship with crypto got even deeper. And that was the moment I decided I wanted to work full time in it and came over to Coinbase. So I started at Coinbase in 2021, right before the company went public. Um,
Nice.
and since my time at Coinbase, I've worked on a variety of things. Started off really in our wallets, the company's wallets. So operating the company's hot wallets for retail, for exchange, for our prime brokerage offering, basically Coinbase custodies many billions of dollars of
Yep.
crypto across all the blockchains, and that you need wallets for that. Started off working on that, focused also on a lot of our Ethereum integrations, including EIP 1559. And then, as you mentioned, most recently have been focused on Coinbase Developer Platform, where our mission is to lead the world's transition on chain by providing tools to the next million developers to come on chain.
Nice, nice. One thing that's interesting with your background, of course, I mean, many things, but one thing specifically when it comes to Web3 is you actually are a Web2 developer, right? You started at Google. So that's where I started too. So I Web1 doing Google ads over 20 years ago. So very familiar with that whole process. So let's talk about Web2 for a bit. I'm curious, what got you, so why Google? What really, what was the, let's say the decision-making factor for you to join Google? And then after that, what made you jump into Web3, which is a completely different beast?
Yeah, totally. So I graduated from college in 2011, and got my master's in 2013. Um, and at the time, I mean, it was a very exciting place to be, Google was. It was sort of, I mean, the company
Yeah.
had been public for a while. It had established its dominance in search and ads. But just to give you some context, when I started at Google, I was on the team that shipped the original mobile apps for Google Docs. So this was like a mobile
Yep.
first era, like mobile apps were relatively new. There
What
was
year was this when you
this
when
was
you shipped those?
2013.
Okay,
So
so the big, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
nice.
yeah. So before that, we had like essentially apps that were read only, but we shipped the first like actual apps that had
Yeah,
editable docs and slides. Um, and it was a great place to be. Like there was so much to learn, there was so much growth. The software engineers were just of extraordinary caliber. Um, and I mean, not just within tech, but like sort of when you think of yourself as a young college graduate on the job market, it's just one of those places as a reputation of being a great place to
yep.
work. For me, especially, it was exciting because I also had this career in music that I wanted to pursue at the same time, and Google afforded the flexibility of working remotely from time to time and so forth. Um, fast forward to 2020, I mean, it's a pretty different place, right? I mean, COVID has a lot to do with it, where you're stuck at home,
Yep.
and you don't have that much to do. But also, the company had just grown so much, and especially within the
Google, you mean?
Google had, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Google
yeah,
had. It's when you have that much dominance and that much, you become risk averse.
yeah,
You
yeah,
become, and so you institute all these processes to mitigate risk, and that makes you move much more slower. So that was for me a little, frankly, boring.
yeah,
And I had a low level of tolerance for that kind of thing. And contrast that to like a dynamic space like crypto, where things were moving so quickly. I mean, DeFi summer
yeah.
was so interesting to follow, and like all these new innovations are coming in a way that like one thing comes out and the next thing comes out, and you're like, oh my God, like the pace of innovation here is incredible. And that had a lot to do with my reason for switching over to Coinbase, as well as the fact that I just think crypto is a fascinating intellectual discipline in that it combines so many different areas into one field.
You know what's interesting is you say 2013 switching from read-only apps to basically being able to edit on your iPhone.
Yeah.
So my whole generation of very early online entrepreneurs, which now is, it's become much more common to be a like a the entrepreneur that you would see on Instagram, right? With driving and driving nice cars, being outside and everything. But I started in the pits, right? Like mid 2000s, building online businesses before there was any mystique, before there was any kind of glitz to it. It was very almost frowned upon to start an
Mm,
online business at the time. And so I remember distinctly, I actually have pictures of my old backpack, needing to travel with my laptops to do anything on Google Docs, on Dropbox. And so the big switch, that's why I asked you what years, because I remember distinctly around those years, I basically I didn't need to carry my backpack anymore
mm.
to edit sales pages, emails, send contracts to clients. I was like, I can do this from the iPhone. And so through all the apps, the suite. So I actually didn't know your background specifically about like making all these apps um, being able to be used on the go. So my generation of like old online entrepreneurs, that's what we were like. Oh, we don't need to carry laptops. I have two laptops in
Mm.
my backpack at all times. It's like, thank God, it's so
That's funny. I mean, just to
yeah,
make it concrete, like the very first feature I implemented was on the Google Slides app.
yeah,
It used to be that you couldn't swipe to get to the next slide. You had to
yeah.
like select it. So I implemented the swipe to next slide feature. That was
That's
like my
funny.
very first project.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Things that today you take for granted, but again,
Yeah.
I remember when you had to, and laptops were twice the weight
Yeah.
as
Yep.
today. I
Yep.
mean, I had my backpack was 8 to 10 kilos, about 20 to 25 pounds, walking around cities, traveling, and just to edit something
Yeah.
on a contract. So now
Yeah.
you can do it on your iPhone on the go, but it was
Yeah.
very different back
Yeah.
in the day. So.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. And yes, something interesting you mentioned about big companies as they grow, as they become behemoths of the space, Google, right? Just going more from innovation first to risk averse first. And I saw it with Facebook because we were
Hmm.
pretty early advertising on Facebook, on paid media. And the amount of innovation on the ad side, the ad product of Facebook was insane at the time. And you see them now being much slower implementing new features. And you see TikTok coming up and over the last 3 to 4 years giving so much alpha to advertisers, going on the offense, and Facebook coming back and going against the ethos of, okay, just disrupt, break things fast. And yeah, you reach a point where you ultimately need a new challenge. So going into Coinbase, how was it? Because I remember, like many here, remember the pre-IPO phase, the week leading up to the Coinbase IPO. How was it on the ground?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was extraordinarily refreshing and exciting.
Yeah.
This was in 2021, so it was like really like the last bull market, sort of in the middle of it, after DeFi summer. The positive energy was amazing, and it was also amazing just to see the pace and the autonomy that you got as an engineer within
Mm.
Coinbase. I started in what was then called the crypto org, which
Yep.
was at that point like only like literally it's funny to think about like the team called the crypto org at Coinbase at the time was like, I think 60 or 70 people. It was very small. And this is the group
Interesting.
is essentially that like Balaji used to lead.
Because they have
Um,
4 or 5 thousand employees.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah.
now we do.
Now, yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the level of ownership and autonomy and ability to make decision and ship things was extraordinarily exciting and remains exciting. I mean, that piece of the culture still remains today.
yeah,
And you're learning new things every day. You're reading new Ethereum improvement proposals. You're learning about how various blockchains work. You're learning about how probably one of the most
yeah,
sophisticated wallet management systems in the crypto industry works. This was very exciting.
yeah. What was, you talk about custodying, right? Coinbase is and this is all public information, one of
Yeah.
the top custodians for all the big banks, all the big funds. Um, how was it? I mean, in terms of the process of you learning about this is how different was it from Google, even from an organizational standpoint? Did you, were you able to get going as fast, or was there like an onboarding process to understand who is Coinbase? What is Coinbase? How do they do things versus the Googles of the world?
Yeah, there was definitely an onboarding process, very robust sort of boot camp
Yeah,
where you learn about the principal operations of the company. And it was very inspiring to learn about the extreme measures to which Coinbase goes to secure its customers' funds. And
yeah,
it takes like, it's sort of a bifurcated thing or bimodal thing where on one hand, you have to move quickly and ship things very quickly. But
yeah,
one thing, on the other hand, one thing you never compromise on is security. And especially when you're dealing with customer funds, that is something that you absolutely 100% must be like really, really certain about.
yeah,
There have been articles written on like Coinbase's cold storage process and
yeah.
like various tents and like the metal surrounding it and like the air gapping and like this type of thing. And you learn about that and how that works and all the measures that the company takes to make sure that our cryptographic keys are secure. And that was really inspiring to learn about.
Yeah. What's interesting is looking at the process, how Coinbase grew basically as opposed to Binance. They basically took the extreme opposite way of going to market, really. Coinbase putting a real big emphasis on just institutional vibes, right? Being the Apple of crypto from a very early point, and then Binance going in as a let's onboard, and we'll deal with the rest. Not that security and safety was put aside because Binance also has a very strong process, but just the onboarding mechanism and the way they approach the market. And what's interesting to me as an entrepreneur and investor is seeing how both actually won. I mean, they're two of the giants of the space doing things very differently. And there's a space to do things differently. But again, customer funds, especially you joined before the FTX debacle.
Yeah.
So, finding out about crypto is this weird thing. So I'm weird space, right? Very different to TradFi. Curious to hear your perspective about, of course, not revealing anything you can't, but how was the FTX incident and process discussed, with people around you in security? And of course, it came to light now for those who were not in the previous cycle. It was an absolute shit show with
Yeah.
FTX and customer funds. What was the process just finding out about the measure that you guys go through and have at Coinbase versus what was going on at FTX?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that day very clearly. It was in November of 22, and I had just come back from Japan, I think on the day of, I think it was like November 16th or 17th, somewhere around there. It was before Thanksgiving, I believe. And I was on Twitter and following, and then like Kobe posted something like, wait a minute, like something is wrong.
Yeah.
I really can't withdraw. And it was just like such an insane thing to witness. It was, I mean,
Mm,
it'll be really hard for me to forget. Um, I think the way that Coinbase approached it, and I don't speak on behalf of the company, but as I remember it, um, it made a lot of sense. Like the overall vibe was, this is horrible. Like
yeah.
it's insane that FTX was rehypothecating their customers' funds and using it in these irresponsible ways and Like it's going to be a blemish, total blemish on the crypto industry, and like it was depressing in that sense. And at the same time, it was recognized as an opportunity, and it was a
Yep.
vindication of the company's overall strategy of like not just being legit, right? Being
Yep.
honest, being straightforward, being regulatory compliant, making sure we don't take risks with customer funds, making sure security always remains uncompromisingly a priority. I remember Brian our Armstrong, our CEO, sent out a message sort of reiterating those two things.
Yep.
And I think he's been proven right. It's like that was a really dark moment in crypto. And Coinbase, because it didn't go that route, has benefited from it and will continue to.
Yep. For all the let's call it the issues that retail customers really see on crypto Twitter about Coinbase and customer support issues that are also public information. I think that people severely underestimate how much work needs to go on the security side to be able even to have the BlackRocks of the world trusting you. And, I understand that it sucks to have and this is to people who are upset on crypto Twitter because their Coinbase accounts got frozen, sometimes with substantial amounts. But I think many people underestimate the amount of work that needs to go on internally to be in on with to be connected to the US government, to have the government's trust, to be an IP to IPO, to be a publicly listed company for years in an extremely high risk industry. I'd say the biggest hack lately, of course, is Bybit. And there's every day, I don't even want to know how many hundreds of attacks you guys see on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. But it's I think it security is one of those things that is unloved until you need it. And I think retail will never appreciate the amount of effort needed to get that to do that the right way. What can you say when it comes to specifically the future of the industry despite and with all these hacks? That's also a big concern for people, even for retail, who put their money on some of the older platforms from the previous cycle and either got exploited, or we saw Celsius, the
Yeah.
Celsiuses of the world, right?
Yeah.
What's your view as being really an insider in this space? How bad is it? How good is it? What's the future of security?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just a brief comment on the retail side. Obviously, like the trade-off between security and UX is very real and very complicated. And
Yep.
the we take feedback very seriously around customers who say their accounts have been needlessly frozen. And I think Door, who has been working on this problem recently on the issue of account freezing, like false positives and so forth, is doing amazing work there. Follow him on Twitter. I think he's going to continue to improve that. I think on the more general conversation around security, this is actually sort of the raison d'etre of Coinbase Developer Platform,
Mm.
which is that we are building the tools not just to make Coinbase secure, which we do, but to make the entire crypto industry secure. In other
Yep.
words, we're exporting our security models so that any developer can use it and build on top of us. Security is evolving. There are a lot of different attack surfaces and vectors, starting from just being able to extract someone's private key,
Yep.
all the way to smart contract exploits. Like it's just such a multifaceted world, all the way to like on the very end of the spectrum, like hey, what happens when quantum computers come
Yeah.
and Shor's algorithm is able to
Oh yeah.
break Bitcoin. But as CDP, our mission is to leverage all of the threat modeling, all the penetration testing that we've done on our products, starting with our wallet API, and make that available to customers so that security becomes a solved problem industry-wide. In other words, if you build on top of CDP's APIs, you get our security for
Yep.
free. And it's not just about wallet security, it's also about things like a robust policy engine. So things like role-based access control, but also like, hey, if it's this type of transaction, then maybe don't touch it if it's above a certain value, or if you've already sent out X dollars or X ETH of value today, then not allowed to.
Yep.
It's also about isolation. We use a trusted execution environment, essentially a black box where all the cryptographic operations happen so that there's no risk of it leaking out. And then it's also about auditability so that we can trace all the things that happen and alerting and monitoring that makes sure that nothing untoward is happening. So all of those things combined, I think, it's so ingrained into the blood of Coinbase.
Yep.
Our hope is that by making these tools available for anyone to use, it'll make the entire crypto industry safer.
Hey, Matthias here, and if you're enjoying this and want access to even more alpha, early stage deals and opportunities, and also behind the scenes insights on the markets, hit the link in the description and make sure you're subscribed. It's free and it puts you ahead of the curve. Let's get back to the show. I think that's one thing that we've seen over the last few years now, that big players helping each other when needed. I mean, you see Binance being very proactive in quite a few of the social engineering exploits over the last 12 to 24 months. And that's how it should be, right? Because if FTX really, so that whole scandal with FTX really hurt retail because FTX was so marketed to retail. I
Yep.
mean, you saw major celebrities taking public hits literally because they promoted it. It was just bad for everyone, including Coinbase, including Binance, including Bybit. Um, it's something that the big players, first of all, have. I think this is important for people to know too. Big players like Coinbase have money set aside to do these things, to beef up security, to help other teams. They have capabilities that smaller exchanges don't have. So as much as small exchanges that don't require KYC might be attractive, you also don't know where your money is going when you use these fifth tier exchanges. Um, how is it? So talking about the infrastructure that you're basically building and allowing developers to use, how easy is it for new developers to use it basically?
Yeah. Yeah. And this kind of comes back to the point of also like Web 2 versus Web 3 development.
Yeah,
Um, Web 3 development, just like if you're new to crypto, it's actually really hard.
yeah,
And it's hard to reason about. There are so many new concepts that you have to know. You have to understand cryptography. You have to understand decentralized computation. You have to understand certain degree of economics, right? Like there's just
yeah,
all these concepts that have to come together in order for you to be able to successfully build dApp. That's changing these days because of AI, but like just the language of crypto of development, there are these things called Web3 providers, but it's different on Ethereum versus Solana, and Bitcoin has its own thing. So it's just very challenging as a crypto developer. And CDP, Coinbase Developer Platform's mission is to make it as simple as possible while
yeah,
also providing advanced crypto developers the ability to hook in at any level that they want.
yeah,
Um, and so designing for both audiences can be challenging, but that's actually like the one thing that I think CDP does really well. Like we have a set of APIs and an SDK, for instance, that gives you all things like wallets, on-ramping, on-chain data, et cetera, sending transactions, swapping. It's all built into like a single SDK that you can just install and use.
got
And
it.
it
Yep,
actually provides both levels of if you don't know anything about crypto really, you can still use it because it just follows very traditional Web 2 paradigms of REST APIs.
yep,
And if you are familiar with Web 3 and you've coded with Veeam or WAGMI, then we also provide the hooks for you to be able to operate at that level. So that's been the modus operandi of CDP is just to ship really, really useful SDKs, bundling them all together in a way that only Coinbase can, and shipping them for both an advanced audience as well as a Web 2 audience that's just coming on chain.
yep. Speaking of adoption, right? And I think this is probably the best cycle when it comes to institutional adoption. Of course, we haven't seen anything like it. What are you seeing on the, because of course Coinbase is very that's a big portion of what Coinbase does, onboarding institutions. What are you seeing in terms of wallet usage, volume increase compared to the euphoric times of just that IPO phase? I think people want to know how much onboarding is really going on. Where is retail in this cycle versus institutions?
Yeah. Well, I think the traditional theory of crypto is that comes in 4-year cycles and
Yep.
correlated with Bitcoin's halving. And so far, so good, right? Like so far, that does seem to be the case. We'll see what happens in 2026, where, we'll see what
Yep.
happens. Um, Within each cycle, you'll have uh, ups and downs. So, for instance, I think like either early in the year or like sometime last year, there was this whole on-chain AI agent boom that
Yep.
happened. It lasted for a while. All this token went up, and then now it's a little bit more quiet. We'll see what happens with that. I do think what is very clear right now um, is that the payments use case is really, really taking off, and there's so much excitement about stablecoins. And I do think probably a lot of that has to do with the pending passage of the Genius Act and regulatory clarity around that. And there's just going
Yep.
to be a lot of different institutions coming into play, and just the benefits of stablecoins are so obviously real, just in terms of latency, how quickly you can deliver it, cost efficiency. It's just undeniable. It's just a matter of fact that instantaneous blockchain settlement is better than any of the alternatives that exist, especially when you get to a cross-border context. So
Yep.
it would be economically irrational not to use stablecoins once you have that regulatory apparatus to be able to implement it. So I think that is probably the very new thing that's happening. In fact, you might argue that it's starting to get overcrowded. Um,
Yep.
but that's just one thing that's absolutely happening, not just in the institutional level, but there's just so many startups that are competing in that space as well.
I was actually going to ask you about stablecoins. So many you hear stablecoins. States in the U.S. want to like each state, right, is
Mm.
looking at stablecoins on a very concrete level, even technically. How are these different stablecoins? How are you seeing them interacting in the next 1 to 5 years? Because let's say USDC, USDT. Let's say Arizona comes out with its own stablecoin. What's the benefit of that? How do they interact together? And are we seeing, do you think we'll see hundreds of different stable coins?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting question. Um, I think you probably will see many different stablecoins in the same way that we see many different money market account providers,
Mm,
right? There are different types of money.
yep,
Stablecoins are just another form of money, and you have different issuers that have different properties, but they're all regulated so that they're backed essentially one-to-one by a very liquid treasury securities.
yep,
Um, Now, the question then becomes like, why would like Arizona issue its own stablecoin? I think probably the most easy answer is it's like a form of liquidity, right? So
yep,
depositors deposit, you mint a stablecoin. That means Arizona has capital on its balance sheet that it's they're going to earn some sort of yield on it by buying those
yep,
treasuries. So there is like the profit motive operating at it. I do think there's also possibly an argument, and again, this is somewhat speculation. There's probably an argument for utility too. So, like in the Arizona case, like maybe if you pay taxes or state
mm,
taxes with Arizona stablecoin, you get some sort of discount or something like that because
yep,
it's some sort of incentive mechanism, and then you can extrapolate that out to private entities as well. Um, at the end of the day, though, what's very exciting is that um, sort of like one of the truisms about crypto is that it really aims towards a separation of money and state in a way.
yep,
Um, and that's not quite what stablecoins are, obviously, because everything is sort of backed by essentially state money. But what it does get us to is sort of more freedom to choose around different types of money, and money that is very liquid and instantaneously settlable and
yep,
very useful. And we're going to see capital markets that form around these stablecoin pairs. So we're absolutely going to see dexes that focus on stablecoin to stablecoin pairs. In fact, that's exactly the premise of what Curve was at the
yep.
beginning. So I think it's going to be a very exciting space for the DeFi industry around stablecoins as well.
Yep. It's such a new space. I think, we see these bills literally getting passed and politicians coming back in different parts of the world, right? Of course, the US is really the I'd say probably the most famous player in stable coins right now because of how much policy they want to push. But when you look at the state level, the federal level is one thing, but the state level, of course, they have their own ideas too of how they want to accept or offer stable coins or not. So it is a like we are witnessing history in the making, the same way that we witnessed in Web 2 these we'll look back 5 to 10 years from now when stable coins, seeing how they will have developed. Like these are the formative years and weeks and months of stable coins really right now. Um, Coming back to security, let's say I'm going to dumb it down a bit for the audience here because we talk about very high level things for developers. Bobby Jones, who has crypto, and he heard about this be your own bank concept and having your keys. But of course, he is a prime target for the exploiters and the hackers and social engineers. What can he do? If you're advising someone, your family, what would you tell them when it comes to crypto security? 3 to 5 things they can do today.
Yeah. So probably my biggest piece of advice is don't put all your funds in one place.
Yep.
If you want true security, you need to hedge, and so you probably want to put some of your funds on a cold storage wallet, maybe some of your funds in hot storage self-custodial wallet, maybe some of your funds with Coinbase because Coinbase is a very, very good custodian, and
Yep.
so on. That's one piece of advice I would have. I think the traditional lines around operational security, like don't ever type in your seed phrase on the internet and store it. Like that's a truism,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Instead, I know there are like steel bars you can get your seed phrase engraved on, things like that. So I think like those truisms are very real as well. Um, and I would just be very careful when interacting on chain. I mean, part of it depends on like, um, are you trying to just invest, like buy and hodl? Are you trying to trade? Are you
Yep.
trying to interact with on-chain apps? The security profile for those three use cases is going to be pretty different. I think most people basically just want to buy and invest.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
in that case, frankly, I would argue that, and this is me being biased, of course, but using Coinbase is a really good option. Coinbase, again, places security as the topmost priority and ensures that all of its funds are secured back one to one, no questions asked. And so if you're just looking to trade or buy Bitcoin and hold it, maybe you
Yep.
have most of your funds in Coinbase, or you could have 50% in your funds in Coinbase and 50% on a hardware wallet that you have.
Speaking of wallets, what do you see as the future of wallets? There's so many different providers, different chains. The UX has improved, right, over the last few years, but what do you see as being the like where's the wallet industry? Because it's become an industry,
Yeah.
like a sub-industry. Where do you see it going? And what's the future for good wallets?
Yeah. So I think more and my own sense is that the self-custodial wallet as we know it today, so this is like the Chrome plugin or the
Yep.
standalone app, um, for the consumer is probably going to recede. It's going to start disappearing in favor of experiences that are simply embedded into apps or embedded.
Got it. Yep.
So, you log into an app and you want to pay it with crypto. Well, you may not even know that it's crypto actually, right? It's
Yep.
actually like stablecoins behind the scenes, but it's just like a dollar wallet that the company provides you. And
Yep.
there are a number of different technical ways you can achieve that. One is through, as the name implies, an embedded wallet, in which case actually the end user, so the person using the app, is technically custodying the funds. And they provide their personal credentials, and that gives them access to the funds, like through logging in, username, password, or logging, social login, things like that. Or the other option is essentially you have a custodian in the back end. That could be Coinbase. It could be the app builder itself. It could be another institution that is actually custodying the funds on behalf of the end user.
Yep.
But again, like that's sort of invisible to the end user. But the end game here, I do think, is like people probably won't, in a lot of the biggest use cases, people won't really even know that they're using a crypto wallet.
Yep. So where is where do you see the browsers the MetaMasks, the
Yeah.
Phantoms receding? You're looking at the in-app wallets like Coinbase
Yep.
growing. What would you tell a team that's working on a wallet today if you're advising a team right now?
So I think you have to just make you have to be really crystal clear on who your audience is. Like I take the example of like Moonshot, right? Like
Yep.
a trading app has an in-app wallet. I think that use case will always exist. People want
Mm.
to speculate, people want to trade meme coins. I do it a lot, right? It's really fun.
Yep.
Um, and so in that case, like it's reasonable to have some elements of crypto show through, like you want to show tickers, you want to show prices, you want to
Yep.
show your wallet address, which is this long hexadecimal string or like base 58 string if you're on Solana, right? Like it's there's reasons to have very crypto forward elements in a meme coin trading app. Um, and so like I would say the same, like Phantom is probably in a similar
Yep.
camp. Um, but if you're building something like that, but your target audience is like people who want to make payments, like a Venmo style thing, it's just going to be a completely different experience, right?
Yep.
And then if you're building a wallet for companies or institutions, that's a totally different experience. Maybe there's no app, it's just API driven.
Yep.
Um, the most interesting use case, in my opinion, right now is wallets for AI agents. So not human beings, but like, headless AIs that are just operating on behalf of humans. What do those wallets look like, and what functionality and capabilities do they need to provide? That's part of what CDP is building, and it's one of our biggest areas of focus. We believe that every AI agent deserves a wallet, and so we provide the API so that you can allow delegation to your AI agent uh, over a wallet, right? You have some funds in it, but you have controls over it so that it doesn't exceed the limits that you set.
So this would be a an agent that you want, everyone talks about the travel example, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You put $1,000, you say, hey, this is how much I want you to spend, and that autonomous agent would then go and within the budget that you define, spend, and the wallet is basically the payment functionality for that one agent.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's one use case. A more high volume use case is around, again, this starts to look into the future,
Yep.
but is around agents paying other agents,
Yep.
and agents paying for APIs. And now you start to get in the world of very high frequency payments, which are actually the perfect
Yep.
use case for blockchain, automating those so that agents have access to various pieces of data like MCP servers, things like that, so that they're able to perform their tasks effectively. And so Coinbase CDP has another offering for that called X402. It's essentially a payment protocol that allows AI, not just AI agents, but anybody to call APIs and pay for them on the blockchain at the same time.
Yep. Curious to hear your thoughts, and we have about 5 to 10 minutes left at most, because I know you have to run too. Curious to know your thoughts because you know Web 2, you know Web 3 wallets. One of the biggest pains, and I have, I've been in Web 2 for so long, payment processing, chargebacks, fees. Where are you seeing the future of stablecoin specifically when it comes to payments? Yes, fees, yes, but also when it comes to rebills, right? Paying your recurring charges like
Yep.
Netflix and Amazon Prime with stablecoins. Where's that going, you think?
Yeah. I think for all of those cases, so subscriptions, for chargebacks, um, like various types of payment patterns, you're going to see these things come on chain as well. And we're
Mm,
starting to actually already see that happen. About a few weeks ago, Shopify just announced their integration of Coinbase's payments protocol.
yep,
So that allows customers to pay Shopify merchants using USDC. That is actually a smart contract on chain that allows for escrowing of funds. So a standard auth and capture model that you see with the debit cards and credit cards. And there's no reason that these types of primitives can't be built on chain. And as more and more developers and companies realize that it's actually more efficient to build on chain, I
yep.
think that they will do so.
Do you see stablecoin wallets replacing completely Visa, MasterCards when it comes to Shopify is a good example.
It's a good question. I mean, it's very hard to, they're such dominant players
Yeah.
that it's hard to say that they're going to be replaced completely. That's a bit ambitious. What I think is much more likely, I mean, you do see that players like Visa and MasterCard are actually starting to integrate stablecoins into their stack,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's much more likely that there's going to be a convergence where when the writing is on the wall, traditional financial companies are going to start looking more like Web3 companies.
Yeah.
Conversely, as Web3 companies start to encroach on the areas of traditional finance, so there's going to be somewhat of a convergence, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. We're starting to see it. You see some of these apps trying to, and we had someone else on the show recently, and the same question: are we going to see Web 2 versus Web 3, or the Web 2 moving more to Web 3, and the Web 3 apps moving more to Web 2? And I agree with you. I think it's going to be more of a bridge, and and because it is moving on chain. I think stable coins really are a huge I think people don't understand the impact of stable coins in the long term because it's so new, but I agree with you. It is a huge point for the industry. Two last questions. Number one, what are you the most excited about, for the industry as a whole or as a project? What are you excited about when it comes to crypto?
Yeah. So the first thing I'm very excited about is just the possibilities of combining AI with crypto. We are
Mm,
just at the very beginning of this. I think this goes in both directions. You can think of it in terms of on-chain AI, which is leveraging the powers of AI to make crypto faster, easier to use, more intuitive,
yeah,
automated. And you can think of it in terms of decentralized AI, which is to say, using the sort of architecture of crypto to make AI models more permissionless, decentralized, and secure. I think that space is just going to continue to explode, especially as the AI models continue to improve. And that's one area. The second area I'm very curious and excited about is around tokenization.
mm,
Um, Robinhood recently announced their tokenized equities offerings, as well as Kraken. Uh,
yeah,
and while these are not yet permitted in the United States due to the current regulatory guidance, you can very easily imagine that changing. And that's just another great
yeah,
example of the convergence of traditional finance and Web3, where not only do you have um, meme coins on chain, you have stocks on chain. So you have
yeah,
sort of in that matrix of like, is it a stock or is it crypto, is it on chain or is it not? You have stocks that are not on chain, stocks that are on chain. You have like meme coins that are on chain and then meme coins that aren't, meme coins like MicroStrategy that are not on
yeah.
chain. So it starts to get very interesting, and I think the financial system just is going to see an explosion of these combinations.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Last question, pure price action. This is a question that the audience always wants me to ask. What are you seeing the Bitcoin price hitting in the next 6 to 12 months? Bullish, bearish? What's your view on this is pure price action, not financial advice. You could get it wrong, you can get it right, but what's your thesis?
Yeah. So I'm a terrible trader. I just want to preface that, and
Yeah,
this is my view, not my employer's view, and not financial advice. I do think Bitcoin has room to go up this year. I am also very bullish on a secular basis of like over the next, let's say 5 years. I think, the
yeah,
writing is on the wall. I mean, the big beautiful bill just passed. I think fiscal
yeah,
dominance is going to happen. Nothing stops this train, as Lynn Alden
yeah,
likes to say.
yeah.
So I'd say I'm generally bullish. Um, you know, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see 140 by the end of the year.
Yeah, 140. And for the long term, what are you seeing where do you see crypto as a whole? And this is the last question when it comes to we talked about connecting basically Web 2, Web 3. Do you see users opening a Coinbase account, first, or do you see them opening a TradFi account, Charles Schwab account first? You see, and then going into Web3. Where do you see the doors? Which door will people be walking into in the next few years?
I think it's a demographic question. And so
Mm.
I think people will use what they are most familiar with. And so if you are a Gen X or a boomer, you're very comfortable with your stockbroker.
Yeah.
And you may not even have a Schwab like online account. You may just call your broker, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then you get down to like Gen X, maybe they have an online account. And so that's what they're going to use. But as I'm a millennial. As Gen Z and Gen Alpha start to mature, they're going to use
Yeah.
what they're most familiar with, which is going to be Robinhood, which is going to be Coinbase. It's going to be,
Yeah.
and so that's going to just the usage of that is just obviously going to increase. And I think over time, what you'll see is one is going to start increasing, and the other is probably going to start decreasing.
Yeah. Yuga, thank you so much for being on the show. We will link all resources, including your X, Coinbase, of course. We'd love to have you back once we see kind of this, especially the next phase of stablecoin. So thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for watching. And we'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching. If you got value from this episode, you're going to love what's coming next. So subscribe now. We drop new episodes and videos several times a week featuring power players, market movers, and insiders from the financial world. And if you want access to deals and insights we only share privately, hit the links in the description and we'll see you on the next show.